Good. You guys
One off.
I don't remember that from the first metro.
Good evening, City of Richmond. Let's try it again. Good evening, City of Richmond. It's indeed a blessing to have each of you sharing with us on today. We are delighted by your presence and your participation on today. We want to begin by offering just a few house rules that will benefit us and direct us as we go forward today. And then we will open up with a prayer. So again, we want to celebrate the fact that each of you have taken time out of your busy schedules to be with us today. In a very special way, we want to recognize Brother Brian Robertson who has helped to be one of our primary organizers. We want to thank the participation of Ms. Clovia Lawrence as well as all of our elected officials. If there are any elected officials that are present today, if you would just raise your hand. Any elected officials that are present? All right, Brother Peachin, all right. Thank you so much. All right, school board. Okay, any other elected officials? All right, so a couple of housekeeping items. Today we want to let you know, we want to welcome you to the Fourth Baptist Church, a church that has been in existence for 157 years. All of our restrooms are on the first floor, so if you need to excuse yourself, feel free to utilize our elevator or the stairs. And in our educational building, you will find our restrooms. All of our restrooms are on the first floor. Just a few things that will guide our conversation today. We want to really give the candidates an opportunity to share their platform, the direction in which they would like to take the city. Ms. Clovia Lawrence will give us a little bit more detail as the framework as it relates to their initial presentations and questions that will be raised today. We're going to ask that there will be no booing. All right, so let me say it again, no booing. All right, let's say it together, no booing. But feel free, if something resonates with you, feel free to clap. But we want to be respectful. We have a 2-hour time frame that we want to be mindful of today. In addition to that, we thank God for the presence of RPD, both in uniform and out of uniform, that are with us today to ensure our safety. And so if you would, we want to be mindful that we're in the house of God. We're in the house of God. We're in the house, let me say, can y'all hear me? We're in the house of God. So we want to be respectful, but we praise God for the partnership that we have with houses of worship all throughout the city, as well as with our local officials, so that we might impact those who are residents of our city. Amen? Amen. So if you would politely do two things. Just look at the person next to you and smile at them. I promise they'll smile right back. And tell them it's good to see you today. All right. The second thing I'm going to ask that you would do, if you would politely reach for the hand next to you, let us assume the position and posture of prayer. Let us pray. Dear gracious God, we thank you for this day, a day that we've never seen before and a day that we will never see again. We thank you that we've already seen your hand at work. The very fact that you woke us up this morning and allowed us to arrive here safely is indication that you are at work in our midst. We thank you for every candidate who's made himself available for your service. We thank you for every resident who's come out today to hear and to ask questions. We thank you for those who helped to organize this event so that it might impact your city in a powerful way. And so we give this moment over to you. We avail this moment over to you. And it is in your name we do pray. Together let us say amen. 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 At this time we're going to bring forth, if we could give a thunderous applause for Ms. Community Clovia Lawrence as she comes at this time. Let's put our hands together.
Thank you so much, Pastor Barry. I want to thank you, Fourth Baptist Church, for allowing us to be here on historic Churchill this afternoon. Community, please give yourselves a round of applause. I believe the best way that we change the course of our community is to get the community involved. And if we have folks who need to register to vote, joining us tonight, we can get you registered to vote on behalf of our organization, Bowling for Freedom. They're in the back. And if we have teens who will turn 18 on or before the November 8th election, they are eligible to register to vote with us tonight. And one more thing, if your rights were restored prior to April 22nd, you are eligible to register to vote with us tonight. Again, thank you so much for being here and being a part of it. I would like to thank all of the organizers of this great event. And I would like to thank all of our mayoral candidates joining us this evening. Mr. Lawrence Williams, you can give him a round of applause. Mr. Jack Berry, Mr. Bruce Tyler, Mr. Jon Baliles, Mr. Levar Stoney, Mr. Joe Morrissey, and last but not least, Michelle Mosby. We're going to give each candidate 90 seconds or less for an opening statement. And prior to us getting together, we had an opportunity to choose our position in which we would start. So, Joe Morrissey will start our opening statements for the evening.
Good evening. Good evening. First of all, I want to thank Pastor Barry for having us here today in this iconic church. And I want to thank everybody for coming out this evening. Let me tell you, just give you a little background about myself. I went to the University of Virginia. I majored in economics and chemistry. I went to Georgetown University Law School. I then got my master's in law at Dublin University, Trinity College. Three things you're going to be hearing tonight a lot about: transportation, schools, budget, and maybe regional cooperation. The next mayor brings a certain skill set to this race. Look for folks up and down the 8 mayoral candidates who bring that skill set. Let me tell you what I've done. With respect to education, I've taught law school, I've taught high school, I've coached. I also served on the House of Delegates Education Committee for 8 years. With respect to a budget, Richmond has a $1.4 billion budget and a $714 million annual operating budget. I voted over 40 times on an $80 billion budget as a member of the House of Delegates. I think I'm the only candidate here who has represented other jurisdictions, contiguous jurisdictions in Hopewell, Charles City County, Henrico. I had the pleasure of representing almost 80,000 people in Henrico. And your next mayor is going to have to cooperate with those folks. Also, with respect to that skill set, in addition to being a lawyer, a lot of people don't know this. I operated a home for special needs children and adults, and both a residential facility and a group home. And I bring that skill set to this race. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Chloe, I pulled number 3.
Yes.
So number 2.
Michelle Mosby is number 2. 90 seconds for your opening statements. When you get to 30 seconds, the bell will ring.
Thank you, Pastor Barry. I am not on CP time. I had an emergency. Just wanted you all to know that. I am running for mayor because I believe that Richmond needs progress. I am a council representative, and I believe that that gives me the knowledge and skills that is mandated for this job. As a woman, I believe I bring the fresh new perspective that is necessary to take Richmond safely into its next chapter, with all Richmonders included. As the sitting city council president, I believe that I've shown Richmonders that I have the ability to be a proven leader. We're going to hear a lot of things. We have 7 other candidates, and what they're going to tell you is what they will do. That's their perspective. I'm telling you what I've done. I'm already sitting as the city council president, and I've already, in the last budget, given the first dollar to schools. We gave the first and the last. This council has given over $40 million over the mayor's proposed budget. As president, I brought council, school board, and administration together because we can't do anything if we're not having a conversation. And from there, we birthed a conversation in reference to our dedicated source of funding for schools. I've already begun to work on our poverty, to work on workforce. My first piece of legislation was ban the box and making sure that people have workforce opportunities. But I'll get into more of that later as the night goes on. But I'm hoping that you'll choose me, your people's choice.
Thank you. Ms. Mosby. Levar Stoney.
Good evening. And first, I want to thank Dr. Berry for having this forum for us this steamy Tuesday. Some of you all do not know me. My name is Levar Stoney, and like many of the children here in the city of Richmond, I know what it feels like to want. You see, I was raised by a 16-year-old, and I was born to a 16-year-old mother, a 19-year-old father. I was raised by my grandmother. I have experienced living on free reduced lunch, just like 76% of the kids who attend RPS schools do currently. Despite all those odds, I was the first in my family to graduate from high school, the first in my family to go to college, and the first in my family to graduate from college. After graduating from James Madison University, I came right here to the city of Richmond, banked myself into an internship program as a fellow in Governor Mark Warner's office, and I saw the power and impact you can make in one's life through government. After that, I actually rose to the ranks and was tapped by the next vice president in the United States, Tim Kaine, to lead the Democratic Party of Virginia at age 26. I also was tapped by Governor McAuliffe to be the first African-American Secretary of the Commonwealth. You see, I love Richmond. I love Richmond. But there are some things I don't love. I don't love the fact that 26% of our residents live on the poverty line, that 40% of our children live on the poverty line. I don't like our criminal infrastructure. So I think Richmond needs someone to take it to the next level. And I hope that I can share the remainder of my thoughts with you later today.
Thank you. Next. Jon Baliles.
Thank you, Chloe. My name is Jon Baliles, and I'm running because this year is a critical year, not only for our nation, but our city. The next mayor needs somebody with experience, judgment, and is someone that you can trust. I'm the only candidate here that served in the executive level. I served for Mayor Wilder in a year, his final year in office. I've served on the staff level for 4 years in planning and development, and I've been a member of the legislative branch on city council for the last 4 years. There's not much about City Hall, if any, that I don't know. Some of it works, some of it doesn't, and some of it is in major need of an overhaul. Judgment. We need a mayor who listens and collaborates. The only way you make good ideas better is if you listen to other people. Other people have good ideas. We don't need another mayor who thinks they have all the answers. It does not work for this city. I think that's painfully clear the last few years. And we need a mayor that you can trust. Somebody that's not going to give excuses or pass the blame or require confidentiality agreements to keep the truth from the people. If we don't have somebody with the experience and the judgment, we will not have a mayor that you can trust, and that's what Richmond needs. I've done it on council, I've done it on staff, and I will do it as mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much for allowing me to be here tonight. I want to thank you for coming out on a hot night. I want to thank Dr. Berry for allowing us to be here. I'm Bruce Tyler. I'm an architect, I'm a businessman, and I had the pleasure and honor of serving as a councilman. I always loved coming back to Church Hill because this is my home. I started my first house, lived in my first house over at Oakwood and Chimborazo Boulevard with my grandparents and my parents. Pat and I have been married for 39 years, and we've lived all 39 years in this city. We've raised our family here, we've started our businesses here, and our life is Richmond. Some of you may know the Hill Cafe. Pat started that with a business partner a few years ago while we lived in Church Hill. We've also lived in the Fan, and we've also lived out in the West End right now. As an architect, I learned a long time ago that you have to collaborate. And you also have to do something that is critical, and that is create visions. And every day of my life, I have created visions for clients, and also for nonprofit organizations like Child Savers, which is over here in Church Hill. As a businessman, I learned that you had to work hard, but I also learned you had to be a team member. And last but not least, as a councilman, I learned that you have to stand up and do the right thing and be the voice for the voiceless.
Thank you, Dr. Berry. What a great name you have. My name is Jack Berry. I'm glad to be back here in your church. Richmond is at a crossroads. We're being pulled by two forces. The city's alive with new energy, improved neighborhoods, and strong population growth. We received accolades as one of the best places to live in America. The art scene, the food scene, the creative economy are making us known all over the country. I'm proud of the role that I've had at Venture Richmond in promoting the city's economic renaissance, producing the RVA branding campaign, plus enhancing the vitality of RVA with events like the Folk Festival. RVA is now the rallying cry for a city that has a new sense of pride and optimism. But much of the progress is at risk if our city government continues to falter. Because city government must be a strong partner if we're going to improve our neighborhoods. And city government must be a capable partner, capable of finding the resources to strengthen our schools. But how can City Hall lead the way to the big challenges if it can't even do the basics, like producing an audited financial statement on time, providing essential services like street repair and bulk trash removal, like operating a balanced budget, not running a deficit like Petersburg? I've spent my career as a problem solver. I've been Richmond's budget director, deputy city manager, and county administrator, and a nonprofit CEO. My wife and I have lived here for 38 years. We've raised our children here, and my parents were civil rights leaders. I've served in leadership roles for over 40 community organizations. I've been a regional leader. I'm not running based on my good looks and charm, but I have a vision to see what RVA can be and experience to get us there.
Good afternoon. I'm Lawrence Williams. I also am an architect. Compared to many of these candidates, I am a native son, and I walked these streets and went to Richmond Public Schools, University of Virginia, and Harvard University. So I have a certain skill set that is unique in what a mayor needs to have. Now, many people ask why I choose to run. I am very concerned that the government we have now is too slow in dealing city services to the average citizen. So I hate that the government, the city of Richmond, waste your time, waste your talent, and waste your taxes. And as an administrator working under Robert Bob and under Mayor Kenny and others for over 35 years, I want to say that the city of Richmond's building is not the courthouse. And the logistics in the courthouse is tremendously different than logistics in City Hall. And I have been working, just like Mr. Baliles, all these years within the city government. I have a 10-point restoration plan for the city of Richmond, and it's on my website. I'm the only candidate, other than Hillary Clinton, that has actually created a 10-point plan. These candidates have not been willing to do that. I'm not going to be vice president, but I want to be your mayor for this city. And I think that I would do an excellent job. And I've been under the wings of many of these politicians, and I bring the proper temperament to this position.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. All right, so we're going to start the questions, and each candidate, again, has 90 seconds to respond to the questions. And after the bell rings, you want to start wrapping up, you have 10 seconds, because I'm going to stop you within that 10 seconds. We want to make sure we get to the community's questions as well. And community, if you have any questions for the candidates, you can write them down or get ready to ask your questions in about 15 minutes. So let's start here. Name 3 accomplishments you are proud of. We can start with Mr. Morrissey.
First one, thanks, Chloe. First one are 3 of my children that are sitting in the front row. I'm extremely proud of them. Second one, more in the nature of a political accomplishment, I ran the City of Richmond's Commonwealth Attorney's Office under budget, with all budget reports done on time. Another thing I'm probably most proud of is and I referenced it earlier, I ran a group home with special needs, intellectually challenged adults. We provided residential services for those individuals. We also provided day support training for those people. It's a little bit out of my normal bailiwick of practicing law, which is a lot of criminal defense work, but Chloe, those are probably the things I'm most proud of. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chloe, I'm most proud of these accomplishments right here. To be the first in my family to graduate from high school and go to college. And when I walked off that stage at James Madison University, I shed some tears that day. I was proud and also was scared to enter that real world after that. Number 2, becoming the first African-American Secretary of the Commonwealth. There are 2 oldest offices in all of the United States of America. 1, the Governor of Virginia, and number 2, the Secretary of the Commonwealth. And be the first to serve in that role after 400 years, I'm very proud of that. And that role gave me the opportunity to help individually restore the rights of over 18,000 former offenders. Individually. More than the last 7 governors combined. And I hear the governor is ready to actually sign 200,000 orders. And I think that's the right thing to do. I'm tired of people living in the shadows. I'm tired of seeing people with scarlet letters on their chest, get doors slammed in their face. I got into public service to make a difference in people's lives, and I'm lucky enough to have that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Excuse me. The 3 accomplishments that I would list are, in 3.5 years on council, I've become the council person that is the biggest ally of the school system in trying to make it better. When the school administration gets frustrated with obfuscation and blocking tactics from the mayor's administration, they call me and we try and figure out a way to make something work through council or through community input and involvement. That's number 1. The second is increasing transparency. I know that can be used, a word that's overused, but in this case, 2 specific things under that word. We put the check registry of the City of Richmond online, so every check the city cuts is now can be reviewed by anybody in the world on the internet. The other thing is that the monthly financial data that's included in the annual financial report that has been late the last 3 years has to be posted online. So if it's going to be late again, we know that it's coming. So that was required starting in April, and for the last 3 months, it's been posted online. I'm confident that they have gotten that problem fixed. We'll know for sure in November. Third is I was the one who asked the questions that prevented a $80 million mistake in Shockoe Bottom from building that stadium, which given 2 years later, we have no capital improvement money left. That some may call it foresight. I call it doing my homework and making sure that questions were asked. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Baliles.
When I first got on city council, the schools were in a lawsuit for the ADA. Disabled children could not get into schools. And I heard people say, there's no money, we've got to fight the fight. I sat down with school board members, I sat down with council members, and I led the effort to make our Richmond public schools accessible to our handicapped children. That's one accomplishment. Second one, Richmond Port Authority was draining $1 million a year out of our budget, city's budget. Worked with Governor McDonald and City Council and the Mayor to have the port turned over to the Virginia Port Authority. We saved $1 million a year in taxpayers' money, but more importantly, we opened up the port to the world. Because being with Virginia Port Authority, now we have a front door that can go anywhere. I knew 8 years ago that the Panama Canal was going to expand And with that expansion was going to need to be lay down space and jobs were going to be created.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas.
Three professional accomplishments would include the Richmond Folk Festival. I think it's a model of inclusion and creativity. It's a model of proper execution. It's really, I think, changed the way that people think of their city. We're proud of our city, and I think that was one of the turning points. The second would be Richmond Ambulance. When I was in the city manager's office, the private ambulance service collapsed, and I was called on to help restructure that system, and it's become now a national model. It's won all kinds of awards since I left. And then the third would be my service in Hanover, where I negotiated the breakthrough water supply deal with the city of Richmond and Henrico County, and also championed the largest bond referendum in the history of the county for the construction of schools. So I brought all the players together. I united the community to fix our schools in Hanover, and we accomplished that through a bond referendum.
I think the most important thing to me, of course, is my family. I'm very proud of my family. Many of my family friends are in the audience that live in Churchill. Also, I'm proud to be a member of Mount Tabor Baptist Church. So I'm very pleased with my family as number one. My two kids both graduated, one from VCU and the other followed me and graduated from University of Virginia. And her mother and I were the first African-American class to go to University of Virginia. So I've seen rough times and struggles and things of that nature. The second most important thing would be my business that I have ran for 35 years. I didn't get a paycheck from taxpayers. Every dollar I've ever earned, I had to earn myself. And so that gives me a different perspective on small business needs, and I'm very sensitive to that. And as a small business owner, number two, even the church about 2 blocks away, I was the architect on that, and obviously home renovations. And I can remember when model cities built the homes in this area here from a community perspective. So I've got a lot of experience there. But the third thing that I'm proud of is that at City Hall, I have a substantial experience in terms of working as a small business owner, being on advisory boards, having the ear of the mayor, and learning in an apprenticeship fashion over 35 years. And I would appreciate if I could get you through the course. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williams.
Good evening again. My accomplishments. I have a 25-year-old daughter. I am a single parent. She's graduated from Virginia State University. She is now stationed in Dallas, Texas, where she is a flight attendant, and she is doing wonderfully. And so I'm very proud of her. And I'm proud of myself because she was able to do all of the things she's done. I am proud of becoming the first African-American female president of council. I think that is a great feat for our city of Richmond. But not only that, I am proud of the accomplishments that I've done as president. We've been making some great strides, even though everyone will want to say our city is completely in the trash. They all want to run it because it's turning around. Trust me. And so with that being said, I'm proud of bringing schools together and beginning this dedicated source of funding conversation. I'm proud of putting systems in place so we can have efficiency and we can begin to put our financial books back on place and become a city that everyone will be proud of. I'm proud of the things that we've done as a council with putting community wealth building in place so we can alleviate the poverty that's in our city. I'm proud of the things that have gone on with the council with adding extra dollars to our schools so that they can do the things that they need to do. I'm proud of a lot of things that this council and my leadership as council president has done. And so I'm proud of those things.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Mosby. Talk about your leadership in a moment of crisis you have experienced in your life. Let's start with you, Mr. Morrissey.
Chloe, can you repeat the question?
Yeah. Talk about your leadership in a moment of crisis you have experienced in your life.
Almost 27 years ago when I was Commonwealth's attorney, the crime rate in Richmond was soaring. We had over 160 homicides a year. we started a couple of programs in the Commonwealth Attorney's Office to fight that. Number one, we assigned prosecutors to every school in the entire city so they can go in there and give tutelage to the students. We set up field trips for my prosecutors to go down and speak with those people. We also set up a domestic violence program. That domestic violence program was structured so that prosecutors would meet one-on-one individually with women who had been battered and encourage them to see this case through and prosecute the case instead of null prosecuting or dismissing it, which had been done so frequently. We also set up the very first domestic victim witness coordinating office in the state. It was done in the Richmond Commonwealth Attorney's Office. It's now done in every Commonwealth Attorney's Office in Virginia.
Thank you. Mr. Stoney?
Chloe, I think that when I look at crisis, I think about the fact that Virginia was one of the 4 states that made people beg to get their rights back, their civil rights back. And when I walked into the office of Secretary of the Commonwealth, Governor McDonald had done a good job in streamlining that process. But I sat down with every person who headed a division in the Secretary's office and said, how can you do your job better? And can we cut out some of the fat on the way you do your job? And what I found on the restoration of rights was we're making people jump over too many hurdles to get something I think is a God-given right. And so I got right to work. I knew that there's nearly 400,000 people who were living in the shadows in the Commonwealth. And I got right to work on behalf of the governor, and I worked with people like Richard Walker here. He told me about he told me about the fact that there were a lot of people who owed fees and fines and couldn't actually access the ballot. And we changed that. We talked about the 13-page application. We reduced that to 1 page. We changed that. And we got to 18,000 people who actually now will be able to cast a ballot this year in this election and elections beyond because of our leadership inside that office.
Go back to what I mentioned in my last remark, which is I haven't had a moment of crisis. It was more like a 7-month strangulation. It was November of 2013 when the mayor, without consulting city council, said, we're going to put a stadium in Shockoe Bottom. And other people said, is there a better way to do this? What about the historic slave burial ground and Lumpkin's jail? How are they going to be incorporated? How are they going to be protected? Are there better ideas? Are there different ideas? Are there other ways to pay for it? Issuing $80 million of general obligation bonds is not responsible. And over the course of 7 months, we asked questions and we probed, we offered alternatives, we looked at other possible solutions, all of which were rejected. And when it came time for the budget, 6.5 months later, the $14 million in infrastructure for the pipes and the water and the sewer in Shockoe Bottom, we decided to move to schools, to the riverfront plan, to infrastructure, to basic needs. And the plan fell apart soon thereafter. That is something that took a lot of courage and it took a lot of time, but it was important for the city then, and it's even more important today.
Thank you so much. Talk about your leadership in a moment of crisis you have experienced in your life.
I'm going to do something real quick and go to number 3 that I didn't get to do, and that was Baskerville. And when I joined in 1984, we were licensed in 1 state, and today we're now licensed in 44 states throughout the United States, and that's growth. Crisis, I haven't had a bad day since 1986, when Pat and I were on a plane coming back from Miami with our 2-year-old son. And the pilot came on and said we were having trouble with the landing gear and we were going to have to land the plane without wheels. And we crash landed at Dulles Airport. I've never seen sparks fly so much from a plane in my life. But before that happened, as we were sitting on that plane, I looked at her and said, when we get off that plane, we're going to have the best life we could possibly ever have. And that's what we've done, because there has not been a bad day since it. And that's crisis, and that's what you do when you want to be a leader. You talk about what you're going to do next, and that's what we've done.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
To talk about crisis leadership, I'll go back to the city's emergency medical services system. I'll never forget the day I was sitting in the city manager's office and a couple of doctors from the VCU emergency department, one of which Dr. Ornato, asked if they could come up and talk to us. And he and his colleague came up and sat on the sofa in the manager's office and said, gentlemen, within a matter of days, the city's not going to have ambulance service because the private contractor is going to go out of business. And you've got to figure out how to fix that. And Robert Bob, the city manager, assigned that task to me. And I worked with the local rescue squads, brought in a team of emergency service providers, and we figured out how to restructure that by bringing the community together, bringing the medical community together with the volunteers and with the experts and with the fire service, and figured out how to get a system on the ground that was not going to be a city department. That was the innovative part of our solution, is that it was not going to be a city department. It's going to be a quasi-private organization that's now evolved into Richmond Ambulance Authority. And as I said before, it's a national model. So that was a crisis in my professional life in City Hall that turned out pretty well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bailey.
Sometimes we ask about personal issues versus administrative issues. I'm going to speak on personal issues. What is the greatest crisis in my life? When I was a young architect working for a majority firm here in Richmond, they laid everybody off. Of course, I was a Harvard graduate, thought I was very important, and then the real world begins to hit. So as a result, leadership is when you can take hardship and you can go to Washington and spend 5 years working with other Afro-American architects and learning the trade of how to help your community. And by working with them and understanding how they approach various crises, I began to learn that as well. So when I came back here, for the last 25 years, a paycheck at the end of the week materialized from my hands. And so I understand what it means to be a small business owner. I think that's important for a mayor to have that ability. And as a result, crisis is something that you begin to build teams with, you approach them together. I deal with it on a daily basis in terms of managing teams, managing construction sites. An architect is an arbitrator and a judge is not required. And every project that we approach together is, this is not a problem, how can we work together to solve it? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williams.
All right, so I'm going to go personal with you as well. In 2010, the market crashed. I am a associate broker with Virginia Capital Realty. I own a hair salon on Forest Hill Avenue, and I have 8 employees, and the market crashed. I had 5 properties. I had 3 in Cascade Creek, not sure if you know where that is. They all were worth about $1 million. My daughter was in college. I had another property in Chesterfield, about $99,000. And then I have the property in Richmond. Market crashes. I have to figure out, what am I going to do? I filed bankruptcy. Yes, I did. I kept my business on Forest Hill Avenue with my 8 employees. And I've run that business. And I've run that business effectively since 2010. After that, I became the fiduciary to my uncle, who is my dad's brother. He's a veteran. And I became the fiduciary to his account. Every year I have to give an account of his finances, and I've been approved ever since that year. Since then, I have become the council person, and I have been able to manage a budget of $700 million. The last 2 years, I have become the council president, and I presided over that budget. And the last 2 days of that budget, council let me discuss it with the administration and work out some things for schools. So I've overcome some things. It was stressful,
All right.
But God is God.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, invite you to stand up and we're going to reverse your order. Ms. Mosby, I have another question for you. How would you approach improving regional cooperation with our surrounding counties?
Good question. Got an answer. So with that being said, as president, I had the opportunity to get on the boards I like. So the boards I like are the Greater Richmond Partnership, On that board are representatives from Hanover, Henrico, Chesterfield. We sit down and we have conversation about how we can begin to move this region forward together. They're excited about it, and I'm excited about it. Not only that, but monthly, quarterly. There is a CAO and a CEO and a CAO and supervisor meeting that I get to attend. And with that, we talk about strategies, about how we're going to show the public that we're working together regionally. BRT, that's one example of working together regionally. We've got to pull some partners in, but I'm all in because I understand what regional means for our city. They understand. We just got to pull in some more partners, but I'm all in to make that happen. And I'm on the boards necessary today. I just want to finish what I've started, y'all. I'm a collaborator, and we can get some things done if we choose the right leader. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Mosby. Mr. Wiggins?
I have the pleasure, I do work monthly or weekly with various administrators from the various counties around Richmond. So from an administrative where it really gets done level, I have good contacts and rapport and understand how the inner workings of those governments work. And I think that's very important. For example, Richmond building permits takes too long. Chesterfield County, you can walk your permit through and right out the door. I mean, if you understand what's going on regionally, it makes a difference. From a regional cooperation point of view, I think you have to have a mayor that has a way of approaching people from a collaborative point of view, from a community planning, from a regional planning perspective. I have various organizations that I'm involved with now that do regional planning issues. Very quick example, on my website, I've worked with the squirrels to locate them on the sports package property. That's where this architect perceives they need to go. And that illustrates, let's convince Chesterfield to take the track and field so we can build a stadium on the sports package site and free up all the land. A good innovative mayor says, there's your answer right there. It's been sitting there for like close to 8 months now. And so I would like the opportunity as your mayor to bring regional cooperation and give solutions at the same time that actually work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wiggins. Mr. Bailey?
I worked for 13 years in Richmond City government, and then I worked for 6.5 years as a Hanover County administrator, so I've seen both sides. While in Richmond, I served on many intergovernmental boards that included county and city leaders like the Tourism Board and the Greater Richmond Partnership. The current county administrator of Hanover, Ruth Harris, used to work for me. The current county administrator of Chesterfield County, Joe Casey, recently appointed, he used to work for me as well. And the county manager of Henrico used to be a budget intern in the city budget office. So we all know each other very well, we respect each other. And along with Selena Cuffey-Glenn and all the elected officials, I believe we have an opportunity now to push the reset button because it's all about trust and communication. I know them, they know me. I think we can tackle some of the tough issues, starting with regional transportation.
Thank you. I just would like to reiterate the question. How would you approach improving regional cooperation with our surrounding counties, Mr. Thomas?
Well, first of all, I think we need to start with the reports that have already been published by two great groups that outline what we need to do in regional cooperation. I think that's the framework that we need to operate from. And I believe the way we're going to need to do it is the chairman of the supervisors in the county, myself as an elected official in the city of Richmond, we need to meet on a monthly basis and address each one of those issues. Together, doing that, we will be able to come together and create the synergy that we need to do to do the ballpark, to do the regional transportation, to get the workforce development in place, and perhaps even begin to start talking about other ways of collaborating, which includes, why don't we have a regional water authority so that we can actually work together in a new and different way. I believe that's how we're going to do it, but it starts with the mayor reaching out with his hand and saying, I want to work with you. And that's what I'm going to do. And I look forward to working with each one of the elected officials and also the administrators of each county.
The answer to the question is pretty simple, how the next mayor will foster and generate regional cooperation. The answer is pick up the phone. Talk to people regularly. Earn their trust. There's a reason right now some of these meetings that have been mentioned do happen monthly or quarterly. But the level of trust is not there. But if you look at other institutions around the region, we have a very successful airport, regionally run. Convention center, tourism is booming in Richmond. And we have a regional convention center board. Greater Richmond Partnership was mentioned. Promotes economic development all over the world. That's contributed to, and staff or has board of directors that come from all of the localities. But if you don't trust who you're working with, then all we're going to have are handshakes and smiles at meetings. But when it comes time to sit down and sign on the dotted line for deals that are worth tens of millions of dollars, and you have to go to your constituents, whether they're in Richmond or Henrico or Chesterfield, if they don't trust who they're working with, the deals aren't going to get done. It's as simple as that.
You know, we want to compete with other regions like Nashville, Charlotte, and Atlanta. The onus was on our leaders in the city and in the counties to work together. And that's why I've already sat down with people like John Vitogas and Henrico, because I understand relationships matter. And you know what? Those localities I just named, the onus, the law mandates they have to work together. Here, we can easily not pick up the phone. We can easily ignore our friends in the county, but we need someone who believes in collaboration, lives by it. It has to be in their blood every single day, and that's why I've said I'm going to be a hands-on, visible, and transparent mayor. You're not going to just see me, after I get sworn in, actually go over there and say, give a speech over in Henrico or over in Chesterfield, but you're going to see us working together all the time. All the time. Ladies and gentlemen, visuals matter. Working together matters. If we want to go to the next level, where I think Richmond is headed to, we have to find people who are willing to work together and put egos and personalities to the wayside.
Thanks. First of all, the rules allow us to comment on an earlier candidate's comments. I don't think enough kudos have been given to Jonathan Baliles for his standing up for and opposing the ballpark. But for Jonathan Baliles' leadership, we would be facing a $60 million additional shortage in Richmond. So I've been meaning to say that for a while now. With respect to regional cooperation, I spent almost 8 years in the House of Delegates, worked with the Rolls-Royce plant to bring a plant to Prince George County, the biofuel industry to bring that major plant to Hopewell, cellular towers to Charles City County, jurisdictions that I all represented, and Henrico worked to expand drug courts, which I thought were so helpful for getting the monkey of addiction off the people's back. And I was one of the founding members of the Capital Area Caucus. What I would do, in addition to the multi-jurisdictional grand jury that works well, the airport authority, let's have regional cooperation with a bus line. From the north in Hanover down to Charleston, down to Petersburg, let's extend our bus lines so that we can bring business and workers down to those jurisdictions. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Morrissey. All right, this is going to be a question on education. What are your plans to build a sense of collaboration between the mayor's office, city council, and the school board? After all, our children deserve the best education regardless of their zip code. Let's start with you, Ms. Michelle Mosby.
Well, I think I've said it on numerous times. I am the person that spearheaded the actual meetings. We have not had a meeting between council, school board, and administration in 11 years. As president, I was meeting monthly with the chair of the school board. From that, we birthed the actual meetings that I think we're going into our 4th meeting when we go back in session with the entities so that we can discuss the plan that has come forth from the task force, from the mayor. And so that was an idea that was birthed through leadership, myself and the chair of school board. From there, I went to Baltimore to have a conversation in reference to some things, an initiative that I saw there. And so what I'd like to see is Transform Richmond, an initiative that's in Baltimore that builds neighborhoods and builds schools. We can do that here. And so that is how we got to the conversation of dedicated source of funding, me taking that information into the administration, having a conversation with the school board. We met with some public-private partnerships, and we began to have this dialogue. Dialogue is already happening. Whatever these candidates do, it's after all of it's already being done, because the conversations are there. People may not want you to know it, but we're having the real conversations and real things are happening.
Thank you. Mr. Williams.
Well, first of all, I am a product of Richmond Public Schools. I went to Brooklyn Court, the public housing. I went to Martin Luther King and John Marshall, and I'm proud to say that. Also, I think the issue with a mayor has to set the culture of a school system. I mean, we've got a rank and file teachers and administrators, and personally I think the over at the main office is a little bit top heavy, and those individuals need to be looked at. I think a mature teacher should be tutoring 3 other younger teachers for not just 6 months and let them go, but for 3 years. As an architect, I was involved with the Martin Luther King School from a community planning perspective. We made Martin Luther King an academic village. It was supposed to be a community center with more public services in it, but we, under my platform, if you look at my website, I proposed a new middle school on the south side and a new middle school on the north side. It's unfortunate that the Redskins Stadium is where I'd like to put the new middle school, but that illustrates that you need a good mayor who can think in terms of community planning. Again, I want to stress that this mayor has good relationships with all the school board members, but we need leadership that can think innovatively and motivate people and be...
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Appreciate you.
And be a role model to young people.
Yeah, the only way you get transformational change is if you get everybody united and pulling in the same direction. The only way we got that bond referendum passed in Hanover is that we got everybody to agree on the Board of Supervisors and the school board and the superintendent's office. If anybody had opposed that, the thing would have failed. You've got to get people aligned and in agreement. That's also the only way you bring partners to come help. Partners don't like to be a part of something that they perceive as being either dysfunctional or characterized by fighting. If we want to get, imagine if we could get every at-risk child in Richmond to have a caring adult mentor. Imagine if we could attract people to that cause. But that's only going to happen if they feel there's a sense of unity of purpose. And that means a mayor who's going to reach out to the council and to the school board and to the superintendent, be in the schools and be communicating constantly and bringing people together. There's been way too much fighting over budgets and other things, and I think it really demoralizes parents who would rather go to a PTA meeting and talk about their kids' education rather than have to come to a city council meeting and be part of something that's fighting.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Mr. Tyler.
When the new school board comes into being, the first thing that I hope happens is they put a strategic plan in place. And what I would like to do is to take that strategic plan and work with council and actually pass it. Have council and the mayor sign off on the strategic plan so there's no discussion about what needs to be done. That way we will literally be on the same page. When it comes time for budget, we will know where we stand because we already agreed to it long before the budget started. We will know which schools we'll need to renovate because the plan will be in place. Also, as your mayor, I am going to go to school board meetings and make myself available to the school board in public meetings so that they can see how we're working together. and I'm going to do the same thing with City Council. It's time for collaborative leadership. It's time for all of us to stop haggling with each other, get a plan in place that will work for our students, because what this is all about is the city's future. The most important thing we have is that we need to do is educate our children.
Thank you, Mr. Collins.
When I worked for Mayor Wilder, the police chief had an open door policy. If he dropped by for a crisis or a cup of coffee, whatever meeting was going on, it was over until after the chief left. That will be the case for the chief of police. It will always also be the case for the school superintendent. I have worked collaboratively with the council and the school board, and that will continue. And the first place it will start is the budget. The budget doesn't start in March, it's delivered in March. The way the budget works in Henrico County is the superintendent sits down with the county manager in October and figures out needs and revenue that the county can produce, and they work it out from there. We do not need people, 76 people coming to city council and begging for money for schools. It should be preordained that we're going to do whatever we can to fund the school system so we can focus on other things like cutting the grass and plowing the streets after a blizzard. And one of the things that the Philadelphia mayor did after he got elected last year is he flew to Cincinnati to learn about the amazing success Cincinnati's had with their community schools that do more than just educate in the classroom. They're holistic schools. It's been an amazing success. And the two of the top executives in Cincinnati used to work here in Richmond as top executives, the former director of finance and the former chief administrative officer. Both of those know the challenges Richmond faces and can be instrumental in helping us do what they've learned there and apply it here.
Thank you, Mr. Baliles. Mr. Stoney.
You know, I'm the education candidate, and I want to be the education mayor. And you know what? As mayor, it's just not going to be simple enough to just say, hey, we added an extra $5 million or extra $10 million to the school's budget. But how about we get a leader who's actually going to partner with Superintendent Benton and the school board to achieve some of the goals they've laid out in the academic improvement plan? Someone who's going to champion what they're doing, and someone who's going to recognize the successes of our children who are coming from hard situations, who are doing their best to rise out of their situation. I don't see that enough. What I see is people trying to tear down the schools for the bad test scores or whatnot. How about we find someone who actually challenges the people inside City Hall, over in our school district, to actually raise to higher heights? You know, I'm the first in my family to graduate from high school, and I would have never gotten that if people didn't tell me every day that I mattered. But are we as a city telling our teachers they matter? Are we telling our children they matter? Well, if the schools are falling all around them, are we really doing that? I don't see that. If we want to take Richmond to the next level, we need a mayor who's going to challenge everyone over at RPS, in City Hall, and the people right here in this room. Someone who's going to take us to the next level.
Thank you, Mr. Stoney. Mr. Morrissey.
I've already reached out to over a dozen people who are running for school board or city council, and I think they share the following view. It's my vision, but I think they share the following. There is a huge disconnect between our school needs and where we spend our money. Let me be specific. They were a few months ago, they were discussing closing Armstrong High School, one of the oldest venerable institutions, high schools, and not just in Virginia, but in the country, in 3 elementary schools. Why? Because they didn't have the $3 million. But they had $12 million for a Redskin stadium. They had $33 million for a brewery. They had $15 million for a bike race. And they have $400,000 every year to pay the second richest NFL team, the Washington Redskins. So there is a disconnect of almost $50 million there, not to mention the $50 million that Jonathan saved. So that's the disconnect. We will put money in my administration, the first 2 years, into $50 million into our school. And Levar, I really love you, my friend, but you supported, along with the governor, putting $33 million into a brewery and not school.
Yes. All right.
All right. We're going to go to the final question of the afternoon, and then we're going to do like 45 minutes of questions from the audience. Now, once again, if you have questions for the candidates, make sure you are ready to discuss your question and pose your questions to the candidates, okay? All right, questions. Questions only. Questions. Here's the final question. What have you done to strengthen minority business? Michelle Mosby.
I am a small business owner myself, so I do understand the needs of minority and small business. I have all of those checks on the list as a minority. And so I have worked diligently with our minority business partners, trying to put together incentives that are conducive for the 21st century business. Some things have been put in place and they're not up to date with the code of what we're trying to do, what the businesses are trying to do. And so working to reconstruct that so that it is what is necessary, what they're looking for, what the businesses are looking for, so that they will want to live, work, and play in the city, have their businesses in the city, and we have the incentives or the things that they need to be conducive to their businesses in the city. I work really well with minority business. I got a little time, so I need to rebut just something real quick. As we talk about schools, I need everyone to be clear that either we're going to expand revenues or if we don't expand your thought process on revenues, then we'll always be talking about raising your taxes. Let's be clear. And so when we're talking about Stone Brewery, that was a $23 million not giveaway. If you all have ever purchased a house, you know they haven't given you the house. It's a house that you're paying the mortgage on. That's what Stone Brewery does. And in addition to that lease payment, we also get approximately $1 million a year on that as well. We get machine tax on that as well, and we have another businesses and opportunities around that business. So we're building so that schools can build.
Thank you very much, Mr. Williams. What have you done to strengthen minority businesses?
Very quickly,
Will do.
Very quickly, I'd like to say that I do support the community wealth building. The community wealth building initiatives that the council has already pushed, but I'd like to carry that a little further. Obviously, as a small business owner, I live and breathe this every day. As an architect, when we were at UVA, they said, just keep the lights on. We don't care if it's $5,000 a month for lighting bill. And the reason is because when they churn out architects generate thousands of dollars in return for the state of Virginia. So as a minority architect, I really stress team development and working with other small businesses. And that's what it takes in order for my business to survive. Mayor and Governor Wilder appointed me to the Small Business Advisory Board several years ago. So that's an example. I also was president of the North of the James Business Council. That illustrates my commitment to all small businesses. So again, kind of preaching to the choir on this subject when it comes to me is, as mayor, like a mayor in Chicago, there may be a red trash can in the lobby, and if there's no minority participation in the proposals coming in, that proposal goes right in the trash can. And I know it's rough and tough, but we've got to move minority and women-owned businesses along. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Mr. Beard.
Minority business development is one of the real important priorities in our city. And when I was the executive director of Richmond Renaissance, which is a biracial public-private partnership, one of our initiatives was to bring black contractors together with minority contractors together with majority contractors and try to pair up companies to do work together. We also had an initiative around supplier diversity, and that means trying to convince the majority companies, the big corporations in town, to embrace supplier diversity and include minorities in their supplier base and carve out contracts for minority firms. So I developed best practices booklets. I made the rounds with corporate executives, peer-to-peer, talking to Owens & Meyer, Bon Secours, biggest companies in town, about the importance of minority business development and about the importance of these corporations doing the right thing and partnering with minority firms. It was very, very successful, I believe. I've also served on the board of the Metropolitan Business League, which is basically the small minority and business chamber of commerce. And I was the first non-minority ever to be selected to be put on that board, and I'm one of the longest serving board members that they've had. So I've had a long career of working on minority business issues and working on supplier diversity issues.
Thank you, Mr. Blair. Mr. Tyler.
When I went down to City Hall and I began to get involved in the contracts that were being let at City Hall, I started talking with different groups and asking them, how many minority businesses do we have in the city of Richmond? How many do we have in Chesterfield County? How many minority businesses do we have in Henrico County? We've had a minority business office in the city of Richmond for more years than I care to remember. And what I found out was Richmond has the least number of minority businesses in the region, in our city, with all the efforts we've tried to make. It's time to shuffle the cards a different way. It's time to take that minority business office and work with the Metropolitan Business League and come together and actually begin to build a minority business base in the city of Richmond. When I was on council, I advocated for the jail to have as much minority participation as possible. Ultimately, it was over 40%. When I was at Baskerville, I worked on numerous projects where we always brought in minority participation because that was the right thing to do.
Thank you, Mr. Tyler. Mr. Baliles.
Thank you, Clovia. As much as I appreciate Joe's accolades about the stadium, I don't disagree with the mayor about everything. One example is the long-term lease that we signed with the Port of Virginia. More importantly, and lately, can you hear me? Hold my time, Clovia. Want me to yell? Hey! All right. Thank you, Lord. The Office of Community Wealth Building and the Workforce Development Program started by the mayor have been a good start, and they do a lot to help people, especially minorities and minority-owned businesses. There is a general bar that's set for 40% of contracts for projects goes to minority firms. Richmond's always been about local. We favor local. We like to do things and support local businesses. We're not a big chain city like some other places. I think what we need in the next mayor is somebody that's going to work with the Minority Business Development Office and make it more robust and focus less on favoritism. I think that is important if we are going to grow not only our job base, but successful local businesses that work on projects in the city and around the region.
Mr. Stoney.
Clovia, I just have to, I have to just go back to the last question real quick and talk about Stone. Because I believe what is missing is that Stone, actually, you ask the folks who live in Fulton what Stone has done for their community. You ask Cheryl Wright Gross what that has done for their community. And those dollars that came out of the Governor's Opportunity Fund incentivize businesses to come to the Commonwealth. Big businesses to come to the Commonwealth to give people jobs that can raise themselves out of poverty. Now, you were a member of the General Assembly for many, many years, but I didn't see any acts by you to ensure that Richmond got their fair share for public schools and taking the formula for disadvantaged children here in the city. I didn't see that. So it's good to walk into the church now and find religion. But I didn't see those actions years ago.
Thanks, Levar. I actually, if you examined my record, you found that I was on the Education Committee, and every year I pushed, and I was the leading Democrat to put more money not only into schools, but to teachers and school aides. Now, let me ask a closed question. What have you done to strengthen minority businesses? I did the following. When I was in the Virginia General Assembly, I introduced legislation to strengthen SWAM, small businesses, women, and minority businesses. For the first time, and I was the only delegate to do that, we put a bite into the bill so that if you were a majority contractor and you promised to give business to small businesses and you didn't do it, or minority businesses, you would be penalized. Let me tell you what's going on right now. Skyscrapers going up in Richmond, majority white contractors are getting those businesses. They promise when they let the contract, I will give minority businesses money. And you know what? They don't do it. And there is absolutely no penalty for them to do that. If my SWAM legislation is passed, you're going to get some bite in that. That's what we're going to do to strengthen minority businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Please go to the mic if you have a question. We want to make sure you have a question. All right? For the lineup. And ask your questions. All right? State your name, sir.
My name is Richard Walker. I have a passion for education, employment, and housing. What do you intend to do? And I've spoken to several of you out in the community about utilizing, thinking outside of the box to create employment for underserved people. You talk about 26% poverty level. The best way to get poverty elevated is employment. What do you intend to do to help people get employment and to deal with the housing issue and the subdivisions and the projects that we have in Richmond that the mayor promised when he first came in office to change? And what will you do in regards to having people feel better about themselves and be able to bring themselves up?
All right, thank you for that. Questions, a minute, because we want to get everybody. Who would like to respond? Mr. Morrissey? Everybody wants to respond? All right, let's start with Mr. Morrissey.
I'm going to do real quick, I guess, make it a minute close. Is that good enough?
Yeah, that's a minute, because we want to make sure everybody gets their question in that's standing.
Two things, housing and employment. One thing that we can do, there are over almost 800 blighted homes in the city of Richmond. Here's an idea, it has worked in other major cities. Take that blighted home, the house that has the tree growing through the living room, sell it to a developer for $10. Give them a free water hookup. Now you've given them almost $15,000. As a result of that, though, you tell them, put up a bond which demands that you raise that house within 90 days and you put up new construction within 6 months. Then that house stays in the affordable housing inventory. If we do that, I'm telling you developers will flock to build this house. It'll improve the housing value and the whole neighborhood and the whole city, and we will eradicate over 800 blighted homes in the first 4 years.
Thank you, Mr. Morrissey.
I think, Richard, you asked about former offenders. It's one thing to ban the box, and we did that in state government as well, and Michelle did it at the city level on banning the box, but also folks who are doing business with the city, if we are banning the box, also our contractors also have to end up hiring these folks who have felony records as well, so they can raise themselves out of poverty. Additionally, we have to find a mayor who actually is going to go out and believe in economic development and go out and seek the jobs who are going to employ citizens right here in Richmond. I just don't see a lot of, as a mayor, I'm going to be someone who's going to drive the agenda. I'm going to go get those jobs as well. Whether it means going to Washington, going to New York, or going to California, I'm going to go find those jobs. And every time a governor wants to bring jobs to Virginia, I want those jobs to come right here to Richmond. Because you know what? We have to have a good workforce as well. We got to train people. You know, it may not be sexy to be a plumber or be an electrician, but those jobs pay when you have a flood in your house.
Thank you, Mr. Stoney.
I think the answer is generational, Richard. Part of it is education, educating children today so they can go to college if they like or learn a life skill. But one of the things that Dr. Bedden has tried to work on, and something we need to expand with Office of Community Welfare and the Workforce Development, is get parents and adults who may not have been successful in schools or didn't learn a life skill or move on to secondary or college education, and get them, because we often hear the stories that if a kid is educated or even does after school activities at school but goes home and has family problems, they come back the next morning with those problems. And so the idea is generational, not just the children in schools today but beyond, as well as the vacant building strategy. But as far as attracting jobs to this city, companies aren't going to look here very closely if they don't think there's a skilled workforce and a transit system to get people there if they don't have a car.
Thank you, Mr. Baliles. Mr. Tyler.
The blighted houses that are throughout our city, we need to go to the General Assembly and get the laws in place that will allow for us to take them from the current property owners so that we can then put them back into the inventory. When I was on council, we passed an ordinance that allows for blighted areas. If you build a house, you get tax credits. So we've already put an incentive in place so that builders can come in and build on these properties. I think we have to do that. The second thing we have to do in order to attract business here, we've got to keep our taxes competitive with our adjacent localities. We must be able to compete to be able to bring an Amazon to Richmond and not Chesterfield County. And the only way we're going to do that is to be able to put together a package that actually is competitive.
Thank you, Mr. Town. Mr. Barry.
Yeah, I would agree with Mr. Morrissey. That one thing that we can do in terms of housing is get some of these vacant, blighted, tax delinquent houses into the hands of people that are going to fix them up and put them back on the tax rolls and improve the neighborhoods. Part of the problem we have now is that there are a lot of flippers that are coming into some of our neighborhoods. North Barton Heights is an example, bringing in contractors and workers from outside the community and making a killing and taking that money back with them. We need to get some of those houses into the hands of capable nonprofits that work in those neighborhoods, and some of those houses into the hands of people in those neighborhoods so that they can participate in the creation of wealth and not just watch somebody else do it from outside. Also, I'd like to see an army of small and minority-owned entrepreneurs created to deal with light-duty environmental issues in the neighborhoods. Leave the heavy-duty stuff to public works, but the light-duty stuff in alleys and trash and weeds on public spaces could be taken care of by some of the people in the neighborhood, empowering them to improve their neighborhoods, paying them to do it, and resolving an environmental problem.
Thank you, Mr. Barry. Mr. Williams.
I can remember in Churchill when every house was full and everybody was occupied and the streets were strong, and you walked down the hill to your job working in the tobacco industry. So the issue of housing is also tied to manufacturing. There's no manufacturing done by an Afro-American person from Northern Virginia to Norfolk. So as a mayor, I want to emphasize the importance of training within our schools. Schools are extremely important. In schools, I want to enhance the parenting experience so that parents begin to participate more in the schools to strengthen the product that we obviously are turning out at this point. Very quickly, of course, the public housing and the population has to be a deconcentration of poverty in a sensitive manner like we're doing over near the old Armstrong school site. A new school, and we made this mistake in the 60s, was always surrounded by low-income housing. New schools should be surrounded by new housing.
Ms. Mosby.
I mentioned the Transform Richmond, which is build neighborhoods, build schools. So I'd like to launch that campaign and see that move so that we can have the housing around the schools that is necessary. I am the chair of the Career Tech Education and Adult, so that we can begin to help train people for the employment. As I meet with Greater Richmond Partnership, having those discussions, so as they go to look for the businesses to bring back to Richmond, it's important that they know what the leader is looking for, that they understand that we're trying to alleviate poverty. And so we're having that dialogue so that while they're looking, we can be training, and those things can work in tangent. As far as legislation, my first piece of legislation was ban the box, and I kept going across the street to the General Assembly, talking to Governor McAuliffe and Secretary Commonwealth Levar Stoney about doing ban the box until I got on their nerves, and they went on and did ban the box. And so I'm about providing opportunities for people. It's about making great things happen, and over 500 people have been employed through the city with ban the box.
Thank you so much, Ms. Mosby. All right, we just want to make sure we maintain order here. Your questions are 60 seconds. The response from the candidates are 60 seconds. Mr. Bradley, go.
Yes, my question is simple about poverty. You're speaking of jobs and bringing in businesses, restoration of rights, which provided opportunity for voting, but they still don't have jobs. Section 3, HUD Act of 1968. I'm going to live and die by it. It has the mechanism that forces not the big developers to come in and get the jobs. It's in backwards. It is the housing residents. It is those that are poor families making less than $45,000. You're the ones who are supposed to have top priority. Will you engage the CAO to make sure that the OMBD, RRHA, and DECD meet those requirements to make sure that it's happening, not after the fact.
All right, Ms. Bradley. All right, candidates, if you would like to respond.
Yes, and already working on it. They'll be at our next meeting, everybody, all around the table, so we can have the discussion. That's what you get to do when you're the president of council. You get to work on things already.
Mr. Bradley, I just want you to know that your office will be next to mine. And we will work those things out together. In the interest of time, we're going to.
Well, I hope that Michelle has this problem fixed in the next 6 months, and if she doesn't, I'll work on it as well.
It's just a simple yes, we're going to fix this. We actually talked about this when I was on council, and it just could not get any traction.
Mr. Bradley, I know that this is a very passionate issue of yours, and you will stay with this until it's completed, so the answer is yes.
Mr. Bradley, I'm just mad you got to actually ask that question. Definitively, yes.
Thank you for your question, Mr. Bradley. The answer is yes.
All right, next question, sir.
My name is Jesse. A big problem that Richmond has is the Virginia General Assembly. The General Assembly is strangling Richmond in many ways. First question, what are you all looking to do? What are your ideas in terms of trying to figure out a way to change the Dillon rule? First of all. The second question is, there's great poverty in the city of Richmond. A lot of it stems from the laws in the Virginia General Assembly. And one of the main laws that causes problems is Virginia's $200 felony grand larceny threshold. Sending a young man to jail because he stole 2 pairs of sunglasses is absolutely ridiculous. So what are your ideas about changing the Dillon rule, as well as what are your ideas in terms of changing the threshold?
All right, so we're only going to do one question. So candidates, you're only going to have to respond to one of Mr. Jesse's questions for the sake of time and fairness to everyone else.
My suggestion is, as a mayor, I intend to not just be a mayor, but be a movement. I want people to have information, and I want them to want to go across the street. We go across the street. We make things happen at the General Assembly. And so I think being the first African-American woman president and mayor, we're going to be able to make a movement in public housing. They're going to see something different. We're going to make a movement on the south side, so they'll see something different. What we want is from here to there. And so that's the type of mayor I'll be. We'll be moving across the street to help change laws. Since we had someone that's running for mayor that didn't change any laws, we're going to have to go across and change some laws.
Thank you.
A lot of the fellows that I know, because I live within an area that's, I get to talk with them a lot, they complain that many of the items that they get charged for are very trivial, but yet they're labeled a felon and can't find a job. So yes, I would deal with the legislature, and again, everything is about relationship building, and you have to be able to develop strong relationships with key players on both sides of the aisle. So a good mayor with a good personality that's not confrontational, but yet will have people marching around Capitol Square. You gotta have a delicate balance of that type of person, and I would be that type of mayor.
Dillon rule is very difficult to change because that's the way the state keeps their thumb on localities. The Dillon rule basically says that localities can't do anything unless the powers have been granted to them by the state, and the state doesn't like to change that. But one thing we can really focus on, I think, as a community and as a region is changing the school funding formula, which discriminates against high poverty communities like Richmond. It makes no sense for us to be unfairly treated because we have high poverty. And the other thing we can work on is the formula that, or the funding from the state for our tax exempt properties, all those state buildings that are tax exempt. They should be paying us a lot more to take care of those properties because we provide police, fire, emergency services for those properties. If they were taxable, they would be paying a much higher fee. But we got to do that as a region. We got to get everybody on board in order to have any hope in changing things at the General Assembly. And you can't do it with an overly partisan approach because of the makeup of the General Assembly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Tyler.
The General Assembly's Dillon rule is what grants cities the right to do certain things. We're never going to change that. The General Assembly is stacked. And for anybody to stand up here and say the Dillon rule is going to get changed is wrong. But what we can do is we can lobby them to make changes in the laws so that we can have a stronger city. We need to change the laws when it comes to how the formula is put together for Richmond Public Schools. We get the short end of the stick every time. We're going to have to work with our regional partners to do this, because the General Assembly doesn't just represent, General Assembly members don't represent just Richmond, they represent Henrico County, Chesterfield. They're going to listen to the majority of the voters that elect them.
Thank you, Mr. Tyler. Mr. Baliles.
The Dillon rule is hard to change, but to the gentleman's question about the bar for felonies, I don't believe it has been changed since the 60s, and he's absolutely right. It can be changed, but what it requires is a mayor and a council and church members and people going over there to the Capitol, the General Assembly building, for the 7 a.m. subcommittee meetings. If one year it doesn't get out of subcommittee, you go back. If the next year it gets to committee but doesn't get out of committee, you go back. The next year you get it out of committee, you get it to the floor, doesn't get a vote on the floor, or it goes down on the floor, you go back. The next year, until it gets changed, because it's absolutely ridiculous and artificial, and it's putting a lot of people in jail and prison for a long time for what most of us today would consider trivial offenses and youthful mistakes. It's got to stop.
Jesse, you know, next to the restoration of one's civil rights, this has been another passionate issue of mine, and we worked together on this issue when I was Secretary of the Commonwealth. And I've also worked with Secretary Brian Moran, the Secretary of Public Safety and Homeland Security, bringing the stakeholders to the table, the people who are actually in the ears of members of the General Assembly saying, don't raise it from $200 to $500 or $1,000, where both you and I both believe where it should be. The fact that Virginia is one of 2 states, us and New Jersey, with a $200 threshold, is shameful. It's shameful. And we're putting felony records on young men and women in cities just like Richmond. It's unbelievable. But you know what? I have relationships over at the General Assembly. Whether in the House or in the Senate, I can walk over and get a meeting with the Speaker, a meeting with the Majority Leader, and a meeting with the Governor to solve some of our problems. What I need, though, is a team. That means 9 people on City Council and 9 people on the school board. That visual of us walking across the street and trying to get something done together.
Thank you, Mr. Morrissey.
Thanks, Club. From taxing policies to spending programs to how we hold these elections for the mayor of the city of Richmond, it's all controlled by what has been referred to as the Dillon rule. That is, a municipality only has that power that the General Assembly gives to it. And right now, with a, let's be clear, a Republican-controlled General Assembly, that's not going to change anytime soon. With regard to improvements, Jesse, one of the things, I introduced legislation, went before the Courts of Justice Committee and said, this $200 threshold that makes somebody a felon is outrageous. It hasn't changed in 2 or 3 decades. Let's make it $1,000. Republicans voted it down. I went before the Courts of Justice Committee and I said, you want to help people not become recidivists? Then let's extend drug courts throughout the Commonwealth. The Republicans knocked it down. I was the first member of the House of Delegates to introduce legislation to say, let's expunge people's felony convictions. The Republicans knocked it down.
Thank you, Mr. Morrissey. All right, next question, 60 seconds. Let's go.
Hi, my name is Stuart. First of all, I'd like to thank Dr. Berry, his congregation, for hosting this event, and all the mayoral candidates for being here and answering our questions. Mr. Berry, this question is directed for you. Your critics have said you're in the pocket of business in the Richmond community. With the exception of minority business, I think other businesses are doing fine, especially the corporate giants that depend upon a lot of corporate welfare. How do you answer your critics and say that you're not in the pocket of big business and the business interest in Richmond City? And when citizens need, first of all, schools, which will bring businesses, they need basic services like leaf collection, which I understand is not even budgeted currently. They need their roads fixed. They need street signs put up. things of that sort. How do you answer that, sir? Thank you.
For the last 18 years, I've worked at both Richmond Renaissance and Venture Richmond, and that is a public-private partnership, black-white public-private partnership that includes community leaders, and it includes a number of business leaders, major corporate leaders. And it's a partnership I'm proud to have served in. In no way does that mean I'm in anybody's pocket. I've had a career, 20 years in local government, 18 years in the nonprofit sector, never been a corporate person, never been a business person for that matter. My job has been to bring resources from these corporations to attack problems and opportunities in our city. So I like to think that I'm really good at picking their pocket, that I'm really good at extracting resources from corporations to do important things for our city, because they want to be good citizens, they want to be helpful, and it's my job to try to help them connect to opportunities. So I don't know where that came from, but it's a perception I hope to dispel.
Thank you, Mr. Baird. Next question, 60 seconds.
Yes, my question is, I'm a employee of the city of Richmond, 16 years. Now, everybody know it's been hot. Haven't got a cooler from the city. We used to get them. No water, no nothing. Had a woman pull a gun on me last week. Nothing, no security when I'm out there trying to get leaves up and trees up from the storm. All I asked the city, give us some kind of security. People upset and nothing. We called the police, never came. All I'm asking, what can you do? I guess we the small people. We the small people. Yo, it's 12 of us that run Southside. 12 of us. When it used to be 36. 12 of us now. Pothole, leaf collection, all of that. That's it. So if y'all want to know, y'all had to see my face. That's it. The people we train, hoping that they'll bring the city, bring them in. You know what they tell them? We ain't got a job for you. You know where they go? Henrico. Answer that. Please answer that.
For 3 years, I've done what's called Public Works Turnaround Day, which, sir, I know you're familiar with, and they don't do it anymore, and it's a shame, because what it allows people to do in the city is city employees get to ride around with crews, alley crews, pothole crews, trash pickup crews, and see what they go through every day. See how they're provided for or not provided for. And the great thing about working with those crews is that they don't sugarcoat anything. There's no political correctness. They tell you like it is. They're not afraid to speak their mind. And that's how the mayor needs to figure out how to get Public Works back to where it used to be and where it needs to be. It's clearly not enough today. And if we don't take care of the people that are taking care of you, then we're never going to get caught back up in providing those basic services.
Would anyone else like to respond?
I'm very concerned about many of the employees that, if you don't mind, I consider blue-collar workers that are the rank and file that holds the city together. As your mayor, in the last election, I got the support of the rank and file employees of the city of Richmond. So I'm real sensitive to making certain that they get adequate pay. I'm real sensitive that they have advancement, and I'm also acknowledge that over the years, for example, Robert Bob put good administrators in place that cared about them. And so those things are important to be able to do. With Mayor Kenny, you could walk in the office and say, Mayor, I need my alley gravel paved. You come home at 3 o'clock and your alley is paved. You know, that's the type of response time I want the city workers and the community to receive. I've seen it done, and if you've never had the experience of working in the city, you don't even know what is possible.
All right, thank you, Mr. Williams. Mr. Tyler?
Thank you.
Followed by Ms. Mosby. Ms. Mosby?
When I was on city council, my job was to study the budget and make sure that the services that you were being taxed on were being delivered. When I was on council, I knew you had 2 leaf collections in the budget because I asked. I knew you had snow removal in the budget because I saw it. And I knew we had grass cutting because I asked the questions. It's unbelievable the shape our city's in today. And it starts with our workers not being taken care of properly. And that begins by having the right people in the positions to lead. And I can assure you, if I'm your mayor, we're going to hire experienced personnel to work with the workers that are out in the field so that we can have services delivered to citizens back the way it used to be when Mr. Bob was here.
Thank you, Mr. Tyler.
I just want to read to you the first thing that I have on my piece of paper that I will do day one. It says, push for organizational structure to ensure that we have systems in place to perform the services citizens deserve. That means making sure that things work for you. As a city council president, I have put things in place on the city council side, the part that I can work with, so that we have a system that works. When we talk about people coming to the president of council and talking about their ills and their things that are going on, they come to me. Because what they know is Ms. Mosby is going to do something. She's going to get something done. And I'll be that same person for you as mayor. You can count on it. I'm promise plus product.
David, it's just a tragedy that you can't have adequate security when you're out doing the city's work. The city employees are the unsung heroes that are doing the Angels work here in Richmond. Bruce, you are absolutely correct. When you were on city council, the alleys were cleaned twice a year, the leaves were picked up twice, and snow was removed timely. Let's be clear, folks. There's two folks on council right now that are running for mayor. The last one just spoke. Why? There was not even a line item in the budget for snow removal or leaf removal. Michelle, you're on city council. How could you let that happen? The next mayor has got to make sure that over at Reed Elementary School, the grass is cut, the median strips are cut, potholes are fixed, alleys are cleared, and you know what? There's a bevy of folk at the Richmond City Jail that, and we should respect what they want to do. Let's use 50, 100, 150 people to get out and clean our streets.
Thank you, Mr. Morrissey. All right, next question, 60. Oh, yes, Mr. Stone.
Well, I just wanted to comment that on the first day I jumped in this race for mayor, I called for a comprehensive performance review and audit of every single department from top to bottom in City Hall. I want to know who the top performers are. I want to know who the underperformers are. And if you can't get right with my why we over in City Hall trying to better the lives of Richmonders, then maybe you shouldn't be there. That's just the bottom line. And it is unacceptable that people cannot do their job without some fear. That's just unacceptable. You know, we talk about community policing. Community policing to me means everybody has a role. Even the people who work in public works, you work in social services, Parks and Rec, we all have a role in it. Well, you're not going to get that if we don't know how the whole thing works. And that's why when I win, on the first day of the transition, we're going to start peeling back that orange, peeling back that onion to see how the whole thing works over there, because obviously we don't know.
60 seconds, only one question.
We hear from you on trust, responsibility, representation, and accountability. Specifically, Joe Morrissey. When you were the Commonwealth Attorney, you misused, abused, and you raped justice. You sent a lot of people to prison.
Excuse me. No. Excuse me. We're only going to ask a question about the candidates now. Nothing in the past. What would you like to see changed in the city of Richmond with the candidates?
I like to know when he had a heart transplant and changed his heart, because I think he's still the same person.
But you know what? We're going to move on. No insults. Excuse me. Next person, go ahead.
Oh, dang. I'm Montague Magruder. I'm running for Richmond City Council in the 5th District, and my question is this to all candidates. The concept of participatory budgeting is where instead of the mayor and city council just coming up with a budget, everybody across the city, through various means like through surveys and whatnot, can participate and come up with a budget that everybody in the city can benefit from. My question is to this. I am one of the only two people that support participatory budgeting. The other person is Rebecca K.W. Killen II. Which one of you mayoral candidates support the concept of participatory budgeting?
Gentlemen, I do agree with you that citizens' budgets and the overall approach that the citizens take in a citizen visioning process is important. If you look at my website, you'll see that I have a 10-point plan that illustrates the importance of working with a point-based system. The state uses it now in terms of which projects are strategically important and which are not. So we're going to be objective when we decide what city services or priority projects are going to be done. Obviously, no more baseball stadiums just for the health. Oh, sorry, I'm in church. No more baseball stadiums just because it's the whim of the mayor. We're going to have a point-based system in terms of prioritizing, and the citizens are going to have to live with that, and the council is going to have to live with that too. So sometimes politics outweighs the point system.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. We appreciate your comment. You, sir, 60 seconds, one question. Oh, one more response?
The first job of the new mayor is going to be to get the budget squared away. You're going to have about 60 days to do it because it's got to be submitted to the council right after you take office. This is no time for on-the-job training. It's going to be a big task for the new mayor to restructure the budget, get the priorities where they need to be, and we need to reprioritize to get those resources going to basic essential services like public works, like the gentleman talked about a few minutes ago. There will be lots of work sessions and public hearings. The mayor has got to get that budget in place immediately, and a lot of changes are going to be needed.
The budget is the most important document that we're going to put together immediately. But I'll tell you how it should begin. The participatory process begins by the first week having the councilman, the school board member, and if I have the honor of being mayor, going out to each district, one district at a time, so that we can listen to what the people have to say, so we can get the priorities set for our city, so that we can then come back and put a budget that truly reflects the input of the citizens. My suspicion is that if we do that, we're going to have the best budget we have ever seen in the city of Richmond.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, my question has to do with infrastructure. I'm a minority business owner, employ anywhere from 10 to 20 people in the city of Richmond, been in business over 20 years. The roads, the potholes in the roads create a big financial hardship for a lot of people. Everyone that drives here knows. And I just want to know, what is the city going to do about fixing the roads, because it causes a lot of damage to people's vehicles. And unfortunately, I've profited greatly because of that. But it's a problem. You know, when I have people come to my business and they're making a choice about their vehicle, if they can even drive to work or pay an important bill because they hit something in the road that has made their vehicle undrivable. So I just want to know, what's going to be done about that.
As part of my platform, on the first 100 days, I'm going to personally supervise 2,500 potholes filled. Now, I've already talked to the rank and file about that issue, and they're willing to do that. So why don't we just demand that it happens now? And I think that'll make a big difference.
Mr. Baird?
Why do we put up with this? Why do we allow the basic essential services to go unmet? This is the capital city of Virginia. Why do we allow that? Henrico doesn't, Chesterfield doesn't, Norfolk doesn't. We need to get a reprioritization of essential services and tackle these problems like streets and bulk trash. It can be done. It's just a matter of reprioritizing and budgeting. It can be done and will be done. That's got to be one of our top priorities.
I agree totally. I believe that our systems have to work. And when our systems work, then our basic services and our services for our people, they will work. And everything else falls in place. We know that when the basic of the house runs, when she's happy, he's happy, the children happy, things work in place. Well, in tangent, when basic services are in place and they're working for the residents, then everything else that we bring forth to try to do, to bring things to Richmond, they'll work. So for me, it's about putting city systems in place so that you as the resident of the city is excited about living in Richmond. And you're not excited when you run over the pothole. And so I'll work diligently to ensure that our systems are in place. Keeping a CAO that knows how to hire, knows how to look for the right competency to put people in place so that we can move our government forward. I think we're on the right track. I just think we got to get that mayor in there that can put everybody, all the pieces in place so that we can be the city that you'll be proud of.
Yes.
Municipal law in 2011 published a report that said in order for us to keep our roads in good shape, we need to invest $27 million in our road systems each year. Administration pushed back and said, no, we think it's 20. The FY17 budget that was just passed has $3.5 million to fix our roads. Think about that. That's a game changer. We are going to have to go in through creating efficient and effective government and find that money so that we can get there. We've got to grow our budget by putting businesses in Richmond.
Thank you, Mr. Tom. Mr. Stone.
Yeah, I was going to add that, you're correct. It is shameful. I was at my alma mater, at JMU, and I told someone I was from Richmond. And the first thing they said is, man, y'all got to fix those potholes and those sidewalks. This is supposed to be the front porch of the Commonwealth of Virginia. And when folks come here and that's what they leave with, is that our criminal infrastructure? We got a series of problems, so you do have to prioritize it. But also, I will also cite that the #1 issue amongst mayors throughout the country is the lack of dollars from the federal government when it comes to infrastructure, because that pipeline has dwindled over the last 5 to 10 years. And so I think we need connections in DC. People like Vice President Tim Kaine, people like President Hillary Clinton, that actually say, you know what? Cities like Richmond are suffering because the inability for the federal government to do their job.
Mr. Morrissey.
Go ahead, John.
Mr. Baliles.
I think it starts with hiring a new public works director and having the mayor support the public works department. The fact that it's been 110 degrees or felt like it for the last 5 days and these crews are out here without water and coolers is absurd. But we have a we have a public works director who used to be a manager, or supervisor, in the Parks and Rec department. Now he's running public works. You may have read about it in January. He was also docked vacation time for working on the mayor's new church in Chesterfield. That's focus gone awry. That's not even focus. We need a public works director that can figure out, first of all, it needs more, but can still do more with less. And if we don't figure that out and put somebody in place that can come here and do that, then the potholes aren't going to get filled. And that's the first step.
Thank you, Mr. Baliles. Mr. Morrissey.
One of the greatest mayors in Baltimore is Kurt Schmoke, and he did something I thought was fabulous, and I hope the next mayor does this. He identified the total number of potholes in the city of Baltimore on day 1, had a neon sign in City Hall, call it 8,000. The next neon sign said how many potholes were fixed the next day, and how many are left to go until it got down to 0. Let's be clear, use the math, $186 per pothole. Let's just use that number. Think how many potholes we could fix if you divided that into $15 million that was put into a bike race that didn't bring $1 of revenue to the city. Ooh. How many potholes could we fix if we didn't spend $12 million on the Redskin Stadium? How many more potholes could have been fixed? And might be a few less craft beers that are consumed, but how many potholes can we fix if we don't incentivize a brewery and bring in $33 million? That's what we can do. And folks, we don't fix these potholes, and we don't do it soon, our infrastructure is in dire trouble.
Okay, next question. We don't, sir, 60 seconds, one question.
We elect city council representatives for our particular districts. We can gain an audience with them or attend a community meeting. We also elect the mayor of the city. But the mayor escapes to City Hall, and the only time that most of us see the mayor is on TV at ribbon cuttings or in the audience of large businesses. If you are elected mayor, will you commit to have at least 1 or 2 public forums with the people during your tenure? At least 1 per year.
Sorry, I didn't get your name earlier.
I'm Steve Wilborn.
Mr. Wilborn, I've already committed to doing office hours in all the 9 districts of the city each quarter. And also being in every single school in the city every year. I mean, I was talking to a former mayor the other day, and he said, you gotta govern like you campaign. I've knocked on over 8,000 doors, but I'm not gonna end once I put my hand up and take that oath. It should be even more after that. And that's why I said I'm gonna be hands-on, visible, and transparent, and I'm gonna be accountable to the people who put me there, the citizens of Richmond.
Sir, I don't know if you read in the paper where everyone had their conversation on what they would do, what made them unique, but in mine, it said before the question was asked in front of all the people, I'll have Mosby 60 minutes throughout the districts, because I believe in having this type of dialogue. You can't get to know me from what you read in the paper. You can't get to know me from what you see on TV. This is how you'll get to know me. And so as your mayor, this is what I'll do. I am in the schools today. Former Mayor Tim Kaine, Senator Tim Kaine, that's what he used to do, read to our children. I have been invited to numerous schools. Why? Because my friends' children are in schools and I'm in schools. I love our children and making sure that they have what they need, and I love our people. And so I'll be up there so you and I can have some dialogue, every district.
As mayor, I'll host town hall meetings in every district, and if invited by city council members, I will attend their meetings as well, and I'll drive myself.
As the next mayor, I would like to emphasize that as an architect, I'm trained to facilitate meetings, consensus. I've been working with trustee boards, and you can imagine what that's like. So I'm certain, and I plan to, and I pledge to, if the Civic Association invites me to facilitate their meetings, to plan their community, this mayor has the capacity and skill set to actually do that, and I look forward to it. And also, yes, I will have general meetings with the council. I already have a good rapport with the council now. So this mayor is going to be in the neighborhood with his clipboard, just like the best Afro-American contractor here in the city. I asked him, how does his business be successful? He says, his boots. He uses his shoes and let the administrators work at the office. And that happens with most small businesses. So again, this mayor is going to have a clipboard going through the folk festival to find out what people actually want and get to know people personally.
I want to make,
Okay, your last response, sure.
I've said it earlier, I'm going to say it again. We're going to start by having town hall meetings in each district where the school board member, the city council member, and I are going to be at those meetings. And the reason for that is I want the citizens to be able to come out and talk to all the elected officials in one place that represent them, so that we all hear the same ideas and the same thoughts that you have, so that when we go back down to City Hall, we're all of like mind. That's what we need to do it, and we're going to do it 4 times a year. 4 times a year. And like John, if a council member or a school board member holds a meeting and wants me to be there, I will be there for that also. Because the key is being able to look at you, talk to you, and for you to get to know who I am. And the only way I know how to do it is to be out in the community with you.
Okay. All right. For the next questions, that was the end of the question. For the next questions, for the sake of time, we have another 10 minutes. You pose your questions, you direct your questions to one candidate. Okay? And the line is cut off after you, Satchel, and the young man in the black. Because we're running out of time, and we want to make sure the people that are in line get their questions in. We have to be fair. Yes, ma'am.
I don't know who to direct my question to, so
Well, maybe one person can,
answer this fine.
yeah.
My question is about our growing homeless and panhandling communities. In my neighborhood, there's a family that's been living on one of the city's bus stops for over a month. No police officers have stopped. No city workers have been out there because I asked. We go by there, me and my aunt, my mother, we go by there every day to check on them, to make sure they have water, to make sure they're okay, to do what we need to do. But it seems as though no one else is caring. I want to know who's going to help and how.
Well, currently the cooling station is open, and I don't know where this particular person is, but the city has a cooling station that is open daily once the degrees get to a certain amount. But what I will say to you is this: it's about putting systems in place, and we have nonprofits and organizations that are supposed to help us with our homeless population. And as a mayor, as your mayor, I'll ensure that the nonprofits, the organizations that are connected to the city, that are getting money from the budget to help with their nonprofit, that they're doing their job. Because if you're not doing your job to help us alleviate those persons from being outside and help us from alleviating the problem, whatever your job is and you're supposed to do it, I believe as mayor I'm supposed to check and make sure. But there is a cooling station, and I know that this is probably way offline, but can you, my liaison is right there, can you give him where that person is so maybe that we can try to get them some help and some assistance? Is that all right? Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Mosby. Next question, ma'am.
Yes, I guess I'll have to give this to Levar Stoney then. Virginia, Richmond, and the County of Henrico promote tourism, education, Native American culture through our tribe, the Wolf Creek Cherokee Tribe of Virginia. My Chief Terry Price here standing with me. As Mayor of Richmond, how do you intend to give more respect to the Cherokee members of our tribe, the members of our community, the Native American business owners that are registered with the Commonwealth of Virginia, and support these people as you become mayor, as our own state, the state of Virginia, does not support us to be a state-recognized tribe?
Well, as the Secretary of the Commonwealth, I was the liaison by duty to the 11 recognized tribes recognized by the Commonwealth of Virginia. What I understand, though, there is more than a bottleneck. There's gridlock when it comes to actually to your recognition as a tribe by the General Assembly. And I have not seen any action. Well, first off, there's no process to recognize tribes in the Commonwealth of Virginia. You bring Wayne Newton with you, you get recognized by your tribe as well. And that's what happened a couple of years back. And so the onus is on the members of the General Assembly who work in the House and the Senate to actually create a system, a process by which people, tribes, can actually be recognized here. And it is it's disappointing that you all waited that long. You waited that long. And I've sat down with you all in my office to talk about it. I think it's time for the General Assembly, like they haven't done in a lot of things, to finally step up.
Thank you for the question. Chief Price, thank you for all that you've done. You've recently started a museum honoring the culture and the heritage, the legacy of your tribe. Kudos to you for doing that. Let's be clear, the federal recognition of tribes begins not in the General Assembly, but in the United States Congress, with 535 members up there. And during the General Assembly, as you know, I represented one of those communities, Charles City County, that had the greatest population of Native Americans than any other municipality, any other county. And I worked with federal legislators to get them to agree to extend federal recognition. It's a much longer process than it's taken, but
If I may intervene, Joe, we are looking for state recognition and not federal recognition.
All right, okay, hold on a second.
That is only a respect.
Ma'am, just one question. Come on now, we have to be fair. Let's move on to the next question. 60 seconds, let's go.
Thank you.
My name is Coleman Pride, and I have one question. As a mayoral candidate, do you feel that you should follow the laws and recognize that the city has certain ordinance? It's just basic yes and no from each candidate.
Yes.
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 so I'll be unique. Yes!
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. We know that Richmond has a plethora of problems facing it. Mr. Berry must have saw me coming up because I've addressed this with him before about the composite index and how the buildings here in the city are mostly not giving profit to our school system because we're not profiting from the state buildings, all those buildings that are owned by the state, and businesses owned by the government in the city of Richmond do not pay us enough money to fund our schools. $40 million is not enough. I'm a school teacher. $400 million a year needs to be addressed to Richmond Public Schools from this point on for the rest of the school system and raised as far as the cost of living goes. I sit in the classroom with kids for 3 to 4 hours doing testing because the broadband width in the city is not sufficient to address our children testing and our children learning at the same time. Who will be the one who's going to raise the RMA, where those people who work in those public buildings come through every morning to come downtown, not to spend a dime in this city, and we are the people who live in this city who are the least paid in Richmond Public Schools and the city of Richmond.
Okay, I just need one person to answer so we can move on to the next question.
As it relates to the composite index, each year, our city council, the mayor's administration, we send legislation from our government to the General Assembly. That has been a part of our packet. What we have to do is to continue to do the fight. And I know that you think it is, go ahead.
Okay. The problem is there's a House bill out there
Okay, wait a minute,
that
hold
makes
on.
regional schools
Ma'am,
and prisons. Okay.
Miss Mosby? Miss Mosby, let's go to the next question. Sir.
We can talk later.
Yeah, we can talk afterwards, because we're trying to get everybody to stand in your question.
Well, as an RPS student, I woke up one day to see that my school might be merged with another school. So, and next thing I know is I see a bunch of people talking about students in the schools. So how do I know that I'm not a political pawn used by you to further your agenda? Because I'm kind of tired of seeing students, being talked about to further your guys' plans. Thank you.
Good question. Mr. Morrissey?
I'll be as succinct as I can. There are 45 schools in the city, only 17 of them are fully accredited. I'm looking at you right now, and I promise you, I commit, we are not going to close schools in Richmond. We're not going to close Armstrong and 3 other elementary schools. It's not going to happen. Additionally, I've seen the grass at Reed, it's a foot high. I've been into Carver Elementary School, and the panels are falling down. Of the 45 schools, over 22 of them have mold and mildew. I don't want my kids or your kids to go to those schools. I promise you, and I think I'm just speaking for myself, I am committed to fixing Richmond's public schools. Doug Wilder, 12 years ago, wanted to put $300 million in the City of the Future plans in the public schools. We need a minimum of $250 million over the next 5 years.
All right, thank you, Mr. Morrissey. Your question, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Jennifer Ramachandran, and thank you for being here this evening and for this forum. I am a first grade teacher at Richmond Public Schools, and I and 3 other elementary school teachers started the Support Our Schools movement. I am also a board of directors member of the nonprofit Building a Better RPS. We are working with private and external parties to fix up the schools, to do the job that is not being done with the administration. I was at John Marshall last week with 60-something Capital One employees to fix up our schools and make it look decent for the students to come back. Now, my question to you all is, since there has been flat funding for the schools for entirely too long, what would be a long-term and a specific long-term sustainable plan for funding schools if you become Richmond's next mayor? How would you work with council to make sure that it gets passed?
One of the things I'm working on in council right now, regardless of the outcome of this election, is to pass ordinances that will put a set percentage of the real estate tax rate towards public schools, as well as a portion of the meals tax. Maybe both of those in tandem, one or the other, take your pick. We'll work through that through council in September. But it is a way for the schools to begin to plan long-term and make sure it is the law of the city when whoever gets elected mayor takes office in January. And that way, The schools can plan 4 or 5 years out. They have a floor, which funding never goes below, but always can be added onto by city council or a mayor that wants to support the schools.
Thank you very much. Next question, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Ms. Hall. I'm a resident. I live in the 6th district. I'm a parent of 4 children that went to Richmond Public Schools. And then there's only one question. I'm gonna say this before I ask the question. In our area over there with MLK, you got this big nice building going on, and wanted to tear down Armstrong for whatever community resources and so forth. So I guess my main thing here is
real estate taxes. We all know that in many cases the elderly are impacted by gentrification, and we have to find a way to protect the elderly in our community. So we have diversified communities, but more importantly, find federal programs, find grant programs that help our elderly. There are some elderly programs in place, and I would suggest that you talk to some of the people in the first floor City Hall to see if they can help you.
All right. Thank you so much for your question, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Melvin Jones, and first of all, I want to thank the panel that's up here today. A lot of y'all have recognized a great woman, Miss Magdalena Walker. Come a long way. I spent 21 years in the Air Force, and I come back home to Richmond. Seems like it's the same old thing, same old game. So, you know, I want to know what y'all would like to try to do to try to make Richmond better. I mean, you know, we getting a great woman statue put up. I mean, it's going to be a big thing for Richmond. We got a big art center right down the street at Belvedere and Broad. That's going to be another big thing for Richmond. You know, and then we got the transit. People are raising hell, raising Cain about the transit system. So, you know, I want to thank you, though, for what you've done.
Let me just say the Maggie Walker Promenade or Plaza that is being constructed, both the monument to Maggie Walker and her legacy, as well as the intersection of Broad and Brook is long overdue. We're giving long due accolades to a woman who started the first bank in Richmond over 100 years ago. Let's just say this, there's been some divisiveness on City Council regarding what to do, but at the end of the day, we are honoring Maggie Walker. Correct me if I'm wrong, Councilman Baliles, but that statute, the commissioned statute, the platform, the promenade should be in place within the next 14 months.
Sometime next year.
All right, Zach.
Yes, I'd like to begin by saying, after several years of incarceration, Oliver Hill passed on to me a nonprofit organization to help revitalize the community. And during this process, we created a program that was designed to cut crime. I'm working with 4 organizations right now that are all ex-offender created organizations, nonprofits. We're collaborating together, and our passion is to stop this prison, for cradle to prison pipeline. And one way of doing that is understanding and really visualizing the fact that young people feel with this youthful vigoration. They are not running to policemen or to firemen or even to clergy people oftentimes. But they look at guys who've been down that pathway, unfortunately, oftentimes. But the guys I work with, they are passionate about changing lives, stopping tears in mothers' eyes, and trying to uplift young people from that and get ahead of the prison part. In other words, let's step ahead of it, not be behind it. Stop the incarceration so much and start some prevention. And we got guys that's willing to do this.
Thank you for your comment, Satch.
And is anybody here would be committed to something like that to our group?
Yeah, I think we all raise your hand. They will.
Absolutely.
Eyes have it. There you go.
Good evening.
My question is for Mr. Stoney. I wanted to know, one of my concerns is crime, rising crime. But also, one of my concerns is, I know that whenever crime goes up and cities want to solve crime, they take the broken window approach. And like recent events in the news show that the broken window approach leads to negative interactions with police and has cost some unarmed and or law-abiding citizens their lives. So how would you strike that balance? Or what would you do to influence the police department to strike that balance?
Well, first, I think we got to get back to what I've been missing. I think it's been missing in the national frame as well, is to get back to treating people with dignity, no matter who they are. Everyone deserves dignity from the top to the bottom.
Thank you.
And I think you got to be a mayor who has that in your heart and has to spread that same sort of love for every individual person throughout the organization, which means, from the top to the bottom in City Hall, but also at RPD as well. Here's the thing, we have a great force right now. And what we want is a perfect force. And I'm going to find those imperfect individuals who have those biases inside the police department, and how do we get to 100% perfect? That's what we have to work on. I hate seeing what happened in Baton Rouge, what happened in Minnesota. It breaks my heart. I thank God every day, though, that it hasn't happened here in Richmond. But how do we go ahead and find those folks who do have those biases? I think Chief Durham talked about it the other day at one of the forums I attended. He said, he's done everything he could in his power to find those folks who should not be there. We got to continue to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Stone. Final question.
Final question. God save the best for last. I'm Pastor Lois Bias. And my question, I've heard nobody mention. We run our church in South Cyber here, and we run a private school, 3-year-olds to the 12th grade, where they're graduating with 4.0. You've been there, Joe's been there, and going on to college. I want to know your opinion on parental school choice. We all learn different, so public school is not the answer for every student, or my school wouldn't be needed. When do we start working together with public school, private school, charter school, and virtual school? We're in a whole new day, and by us all sitting down together, the students benefit. So I want to know where you stand on school choice. We've been fighting in General Assembly for 12 years. We finally got the scholarship tax credit passed.
I believe school choice is a good thing. I find it very interesting when we start talking about teaching children. There's only one way to teach a child. But yet, I bet there are probably a minimum of 6 different religions in this room tonight. I'm Presbyterian. I suspect there's some Baptists and maybe a few Catholics, maybe a couple of Episcopals somewhere in this crowd. There you go. And I find it interesting that we all believe in God, but we all go to God in different ways.
Amen.
So when it comes to children, one size does not fit all. What we need to do is to work with the child and find that pathway that works for them so they can have a good relationship in school, they can have a great relationship with God.
Are you saying you're going to work on that if you become mayor?
Absolutely, because there's no other way to do it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. For all of the community who did participate in the question period, again, thank you, thank you, thank you. And now we're going to have closing remarks by all of the candidates, the mayoral candidates, starting with Michelle Mosby. 60 seconds closing. That's my instruction, me given.
At the end of the day, what we need is a leader that is a leader. I am a proven leader. We have a lot of candidates up here, so I know it's a lot of information to take in. We got Mr. Morrissey. He has a 0% pass rate in the General Assembly, and I don't care if it's Republican or Democrat, it's still 0. Are we really willing to take that risk as our mayor? We have Mr. Stoney. I think he's an absolutely great guy. However, his experience says he's saying we're going to do this comprehensive audit. I don't know if you know, but we have a complexity in local government. You can't just walk in and do a comprehensive audit. Where are you going to get the resources? Are we going to take that from schools? Are we going to take that from public safety? You can't do do that. You gotta be in it to understand that. We got Mr. Baliles, he's also a great guy, but he doesn't even communicate on council, and so that's a problem. We've got Mr. Howard, great, awesome. However, we're cleaning up some of the mess from the previous council. That's why we're just doing the 3 million. We've got Jack Berry, he may be great, but he's running for CAO, not mayor.
Thank
and
you
we got
so much,
Mr.
Ms.
Williams.
Mosby.
I should be your mayor of choice. I can really, really turn the city around.
All right. We're going to keep our responses, our closing remarks in 60 seconds.
I love you too, Michelle.
Would you like a glass of lemon shade?
This particular candidate is the only candidate here that has 35 years of a continuous activity in that building over there from the administrative level, knows where the nuts and bolts are, and also the infrastructure of this city. I know the city like the back of my hand, and I want to be your mayor. I am a great role model for our kids. If you want our kids to have a role model like I had, across the street was a barbershop, Reed's Barbershop. Doug would walk down the street from his law office and talk to me and my father and me at 8 years old. I remember that. That's Doug Rock, okay? Now, I'm saying, do you want $5 million extra money for your school system, or do you want a mayor that can make and inspire 3,000 children? I think that I can do that, and I really need your help to be the next mayor. Thank you.
You know, we all want to be better neighbors to each other. We all want to unite our efforts to build a better city. And when we do, nothing can stand in the way of us becoming one of the most creative, diverse, inclusive, and prosperous cities in the country. If you care about the city like I do, and I know that you do, if you see its remarkable potential but are frustrated by the senseless shortcomings, if you want to stop talking about our problems and start fixing them, if you want a proven leader in City Hall rather than another politician, I ask that you join me. I ask that you join our campaign, because together we can make this happen. I know we can. Thank you.
Thank you for being here tonight and staying till 8:30. When I was on council, I listened to the constituents. And in the very beginning, when this whole thing of election started out, the RTD did a lot of articles, did a town hall meeting. And what came out of that was a purposeful leader. We're looking for a purposeful leader. We're looking for somebody who's going to be a game changer. When I was on council, I had one phone, and that was my cell phone. And when you called this number, you got this phone. I did that because I wanted to talk to the constituents and the concerned citizens of our community. It is the only way you can lead, is when you listen. And I promise you tonight, if I am your mayor, I'm going to have one phone number, and all in this room and in this city will have it. Because I don't want any filters between me and you. I want to represent you. I want to lead this city to the next level. I'm Bruce Tyler, and I'm running for mayor.
I want to thank Reverend Barry and Fourth Baptist Church for having us tonight. Experience, judgment, and trust. There's nothing we can't accomplish in this city, but the next mayor has to face the fact that they're not going to be flashy projects in the next 4 or 8 years. You got to put your head down and focus on the basics. I've been inside City Hall. I know how it works. I listen first because you can't learn if you're talking, and you have to be able to engage other ideas from other people, and that is critical to getting things done. Trust. I've been accessible. I've been accountable. I communicate through a newsletter and social media channels unlike anybody else on council's done. You can't earn the trust of Richmonders if you don't have the experience and you haven't demonstrated good judgment. And I appreciate everybody being here tonight. I will do that as mayor. My name is Jon Baliles, and thank you for having us tonight.
I'm going to first thank Clovia and Dr. Barry for hosting this evening, to be here for 8:30. That's just awesome that all you all stuck around. The other day I was finishing up telling someone why I was running for mayor, and they heard exactly what you heard today. And the person turned around to me and said, well, you actually give a darn. And I said, yes, I do care. because I love Richmond. This is my home. And so the other day I was going through some old letters and some old pictures, and I ran across this letter that my dad wrote me 16 years ago. He said, "Hey, Levar, I hope everything is fine up there. I was thinking that if you write, I would have known you needed some money. So write, son. I found a part-time job, and it's killing me. I won't write much longer. I'm tired, so I love you. I miss you. Write me and tell me how everything is. Love, Dad." Now, my dad had a $35,000 a year job as a custodian. He didn't have much, but he's willing to sacrifice for me because I mattered. And I think what we're missing in the mayor of the city is whether or not we tell our children they matter by strengthening public education. Are we telling our families they matter by ensuring that our communities and neighborhoods are safer? And are we telling the city in general, do they matter by transforming City Hall?
Thank you, Mr. Stone.
Dr. Barry, this community, thank you for opening this up. First of all, and I also want to thank the cadre of talent up here. Jack, your business acumen is terrific. Businessmen, Bruce and Lawrence and Jack, Jonathan, you've run small businesses, and I'm pleased and proud to be up here with you all. Let's talk about this. When we're looking at what's going to happen in the future, look at your track record. One of my opponents talked about getting legislation passed in the General Assembly. I guess she didn't see the point source of nitrogen that I prevented from going into the James River. Or for working with the Republican side to get actual writ of innocence passed and other restorative justice bills. But what I'm going to do is what I've done over the last 20 to 25 years. I've always worked for the underdog. I've always worked for the person who didn't have a bevy of lawyers and lobbyists on his side. I've defended folks. I'm going to continue to do that. And here's the last thing that I wanted you to take away from this. I will run the city like a business. I don't need $1 million or $500,000 executive protection unit. I will fix core business services first. Thank you.
There you have it. You can make your opinions. And what you did is coming up on November 8th. All right? We want to make sure every person get out and register to vote. Pastor Barry, you're going to close us out.
We're going to ask before you leave, we're going to ask that the ushers will hold the doors. Before you leave, I need everybody, before you leave, we'll hold the doors. I'm going to ask that everyone will stand. If everyone will stand. Again, can we give our mayoral candidates another round of applause? And then before we leave today, I want to say that I represent a large delegation of pastors and community leaders who are serious about community work. There's a scripture that we live by in the Christian tradition. Is James chapter 2, verse 17, that says, "Faith without works is dead." And so we pray today that you leave here realizing that we are not just persons who exercise faith and have faith, but we realize that it must be accompanied with action. And so last but not least, this is what I want you to do. Stretch out your hand. Stretch out your hand. And I want you to look at the hand next to you. Look at the hand next to you. Don't look at me. Don't look at your hand. Look at the hand next to you. That hand that you're looking at might be the hand that has to dry your tears when you go through tragedy. That hand that you're looking at may very well be the hand that has to hold an umbrella as we walk out these doors. That hand that's next to you may be the hand that has to feed you. And so in order for our city to be great is that we all rely and depend on one another. And so if you would, reach for that hand and let us close out in a word of prayer. Let us pray. Dear gracious God, we thank you so much for those who had the courage to come out on tonight. We thank you, Lord, for people like for Brian Robertson and Clovia Lawrence and all of those who worked so hard behind the scenes, who saw this as valuable. God, we thank you for the work you're doing in the East End, and we thank you for how you're going to move in the city of Richmond. We pray your blessings upon every mayoral candidate who has availed themselves for your service. And so now we pray, as we've heard today, that faith without works is dead. May our members of this great city get off their couches and go vote in November. We pray not only for this city, but we pray for our nation as we have serious conversation about our next leader. And last but not least, we pray for your protection, not over just black lives, blue lives, but all lives matter in your sight. Be with our nation, be with our world is our prayer. And it's in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ. It is in your name we pray. Together we say amen. 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 God bless you. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much for coming. Please be safe going down the stairs. Please be safe going down the stairs. They're wet outside. Please hold them to the rail. God bless you and thank you for sharing with us on today.